Good evening, YouTubers. Sorry about my appearance, but I've been a little sick for the past few days with stomach flu going around. Of course, today I've seen something that made me more sick. Apparently, there's more controversy over Kim Davis' State of Union address, and that's what makes me sick, is the controversy. Last year, people labeled Kim Davis as a bigot and a lawbreaker for refusing to issue marriage licenses after a Supreme Court ruling that forced legalization of same-sex marriage in all 50 states. The question is, though, why does this make her a bigot, and what law did she break? Let's work backwards here. First of all, the only illegal actions taken in this whole thing were by the Supreme Court. Their ruling violates the 10th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which is the final amendment of the Bill of Rights, and says, "The power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved for the states respectively or to the people." Basically, in terms that anybody can understand, any issues not specifically outlined in the Constitution as issues to be regulated or decided upon by the federal government and not expressly prohibited by the states to decide on by the Constitution are left up to the states, which still remain slightly autonomous, and the people of those states. These are things like local taxation, local roads and state highways, municipal ordinances, and marriage. There's no part of the Constitution expressing a constitutional right to marriage for anybody, nor forbidding states to make laws about it. This means the final decision on any of these issues falls to the state, which means any ban on gay marriage for any reason, any ban on any marriage for any reason, technically, falls to the states, and they're within their legal right to ban straight people from getting married if they wanted to. But, besides the issue, that's just like legal miscellany there, in theory. Anyway, the Supreme Court tried to justify this illegal decision, though, with the 14th Amendment. There are 5 clauses to the amendment, which I outline in the video description, by the way, if you want to look down and see the other interesting clauses in the amendment. And, along with other constitutional laws pertinent to the issue at hand, too, because I also outlined the First Amendment and the 10th Amendment, even though I outlined it in the video. The clause they applied to this issue is Section 1. Section 1 of the 14th Amendment says, "All persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges or immunities of citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, nor deny any person within its jurisdiction equal protection of the Constitution," which basically sets up this whole thing as, yes, it's a constitutional amendment, this applies to constitutional rights. You can't take away somebody's privilege of free speech based on the color of their skin. But, moving on here, as you see, their argument is invalid with this issue, since the 14th Amendment, as I just said, applies to constitutional laws and rights. And the total sum of that is that the Supreme Court's decision was wholly illegal, so what they tried to do was called legislation from the bench, which they can't do, because since this doesn't apply to constitutional rights and there is no constitutional amendment on marriage, that was a ruling, that they couldn't make and an amendment they couldn't apply. Sadly, most Americans are really dumb. They're under the misconception that the Supreme Court is the supreme authority of the land, but this is not the case, which is a good thing, The Supreme Court has made legal decisions like this before, like in the case of Dred v. Scott, where they determined, without any constitutional basis, that slave owners had a constitutional right to own slaves, which was a flimsy premise similar to this, because there's no thing saying in the Constitution saying that you can own slaves. There is something saying that people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and they shouldn't be imprisoned, but there is, wrongfully and stuff, but there is nothing saying that you can own slaves, Honestly, really, Obergefell v. Ohio is the Dred v. Scott of our time. They created a right to marriage, which didn't exist, and ignored the rights of the states to refuse, the same way the sitting court at the time created a right to slavery, and ignored the right to be reasonably expect not to be unlawfully detained or imprisoned by anybody. What you need to realize, though, is that any decision the Supreme Court needs to make has to be based on the existing law. They're not allowed to create new laws like they did here or in Dred v. Scott. That's something only Congress is allowed to do, is to amend the Constitution and create new laws. That was states if they create a constitution of the states, but that's a completely different issue. However, any illegal decisions the Supreme Court makes hold no legal weight or authority. Now this is where Kim Davis comes in. Her actions fall under a legal form of civil disobedience called nullification, which is actually more than her personal choice. It's her legal duty and the legal duty of clerks all over the country in states that have these bans to uphold laws of their state and disobey any illegal decisions made by the Supreme Court. Which means, because Congress did not pass a constitutional amendment, she has the right and the duty to go and refuse this. If Congress had passed a constitutional amendment, and this weren't just a Supreme Court decision, if she refused, then she would be breaking law. That's the difference there, So she broke no law this time. If there were a constitutional amendment passed, she would have. Moving on. Anyway, her actions were also smeared on social media and the mainstream media, which any of you who are smart know is a hotbed of dishonesty. So, we're going to play a little game I like to call Lies and Truth to clear this up. Our first lie: Kim Davis's actions were illegal. As I said before, her actions were perfectly legal. Due to the illegal nature of the Supreme Court decision, it was her duty to nullify it and uphold the state law, and the state of Kentucky had approved by voter referendum a ban on gay marriage. In fact, the clerks who followed the Supreme Court decision nationwide in states that had these bans that were voted upon by the people or legislated in the state legislature, they were breaking the law. Second lie here: Kim Davis refused to issue gay marriage licenses. Truth is, this is not in itself a lie, but I consider it one. Kim Davis refused to issue any marriage licenses. In fact, 2 of the 4 couples that filed a lawsuit against her were male and female couples. So, straight couples. And, by doing things this way, I actually think she handled things quite brilliantly, but of course, it would not fit the hysterical left-wing narrative labeling her as a bigot, so they basically said she refused to issue gay marriage licenses, sidestepping the fact that she in no way was discriminating. She was exercising her legal right and her legal duty to nullify in general. So what law was broken in this whole incident, though, if any? How about this one? Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion, nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, of the press, of the right of people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for redress of grievances. That's a little thing called the First Amendment. Now, true bigots will say it only keeps religion out of the government. Just read this part again, though. That little second part there. Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. This means the government can't establish a religion, or punish people professing a certain faith, as long as it does not cause actual harms to others. And her actions only harm the feelings of people trying to force her to engage in activity which is still technically illegal in the state of Kentucky due to the non-binding nature of the Supreme Court's illegal decisions. And not to mention, it also, in my opinion, falls under that last part too. The right to go and petition the government for redress of grievances, because she had a rightful grievance. The state of Kentucky has a rightful grievance. The federal government made an illegal decision, stepped in, and abridged their rights. Wrapping things up here. Personally, I think Kim Davis's religious beliefs are wrong. I think her opinions are wrong. But the reality is, she broke no laws, and she's a victim. The only bigots in this episode are the Supreme Court, who made an illegal decision based on their personal beliefs and not based on law. And the judge, in this case, who illegally ordered the imprisonment of Kim Davis, violating her constitutional right to have a reasonable expectation not to be wrongfully imprisoned, which is something the 14th Amendment guarantees to everyone, including Christians. And of course, last but not least, definitely not the least, LGBT activists who celebrated the illegal imprisonment of this woman for what she believes, and the senator who acted embarrassed over inviting a woman who stood up for the law and for her personal beliefs so that she could stare down Barack Obama, a tyrant, a dictator, who encouraged these illegal actions and breeded a social climate where these illegal actions could be taken and nobody would care because nobody cares about the law anymore. It doesn't mean anything under Barack Obama and the Democrats. People like that, they screwed America out of its chance to get actual equality through the proper legal channels. We could have had marriage equality, but what we have now is a complete and total travesty, and a legal law that should be turned over, and the people involved with it should be punished. The only two legal courses we had and stuff that would have gained us actual equality would have been a constitutional amendment declaring marriage a actual constitutional right, which would have made the 14th Amendment kick in and guarantee it to everybody, or through a popular referendum like they did in Ireland, who basically was the only one who achieved an actual victory in equality last year, by having the people unanimously say, this is something we want. Only after that could we really call Kim Davis a bigot for refusing to follow the law. But, not now. She only disobeyed an illegal and unlawful decree made based on the political beliefs of 5 appointed officials, accountable to nobody and holding no basis in law. Anyway, I will at a later time make a video elaborating more on the Supreme Court's illegal decisions, but now it's time for me to sign off and get my sick ass to bed, because this stomach flu is killing me. So good night, everyone, and that's some food for thought there.